Item 2B, ID 2019-185, consideration for a special exception use for the new Culvers restaurant. And staff, do you have a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Andrew Penny, for the record, Senior Planner, Development Services. Before I get started on my presentation, I just wanted to kind of bring the board up to date. This is a relatively new process for the city. We've always had special exceptions, but traditionally it went straight from DRC to City Commission. There's a 2017 ordinance that now introduced the Planning and Zoning Board to review the application and provide recommendation to the City Commission. And that's spelled out in section 3154, paragraph E. If you'd like, I brought it, I can read it to you. It says, the Planning and Zoning Board shall conduct a public hearing in which they discuss the DRC report and the project proposal prior to making a recommendation concerning the project to the City Commission. If the Planning and Zoning Board determines that the proposed use is in compliance with the general standards of review, use regulations, and development standards of this code, then they shall recommend approval of the special exception to the City Commission with or without conditions as determined appropriate. If the Planning and Zoning Board finds that the proposed special exception is not in compliance, they shall recommend denial of the application. The Planning and Zoning Board may continue the matter until any additional information or studies requested have been completed and offered in testimony. So it does call this a public hearing. So as chairman, you may want to bring anybody that's planning to speak on this item forward to be sworn in before we start the presentation.
Would anyone like to be sworn in to speak on this?
Please raise your right hand. Whoever is being sworn in, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Alrighty, so let's jump in. Tonight, same itinerary. I'm going to give you the purpose of why we're here, details about the application, the review criteria, and then end with a recommendation. This property is located in the TOC-G Gateway Zoning District. In this district, we look at the permitted uses to see how to handle any new development. A restaurant is a use that's permitted by right. However, when the restaurant contains drive-through facilities, it becomes a special exception use, which is why we're going through this process tonight. Our code offers a definition of special exception uses. Basically, they're uses that may be deemed appropriate, but because of their operational characteristics are required to be given individual consideration. And that's why we're here tonight at hearing. An overview of the process starts at DRC, comes to Planning and Zoning for a recommendation, and then ends at City Commission. Also, sorry, I should have brought this up previously when I was describing your role and function. The same section of the code, another paragraph, when it goes to City Commission, if they're not satisfied with the application at that time, they may refer it back to P&Z. So there is a chance it could come back. I don't know if that'll happen with this one, but there is a chance. Just want to put that on your radar. So I've got an aerial highlighting the subject property. It's at Copens and State Road 7, just east of the Wawa. The assigned address is 5510 West Copens. Here's the site plan that's been provided by the applicant, prepared by Bowman Engineering. We've got Culvers on the eastern end of the site plan, and they've got a future phase proposed out there. That's not part of this application, but it is relevant in the layout of the site. Here are the elevations provided by the applicant of what the restaurant will look like. We're looking at the north elevation. Here's the east elevation. South, this is the side with the drive-through on it. And the west elevation. So, section 3154 gives us 10 review criteria when we consider a special exception use. These are obviously abbreviated. For full details, please refer to the staff report or the Code of Ordinances. So the first criterion are compliance and consistency with the comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and policies. I wanted to pull out these two policies because they're somewhat related. That the drive-through facilities are discouraged unless designed in a manner to encourage pedestrian and transit usage. And development within the TOC shall ensure that all parcels of land have sidewalk connects leading to transit stops. I've taken the applicant's site plan and I've highlighted those pedestrian routes. You can see lots of connections to both the public right-of-way and the adjacent property. Lots of pedestrian connectivity here. And on this exhibit, we've got the subject property, and I identified where the Culvers building is. And then in orange, I don't know if you can see it very well there, but that is a bus shelter serviced by Broward County Transit. So it's got pedestrian activity, pedestrian connectivity, and it's very close to a bus shelter. So that's how it addressed those comp plan policies. Now, as far as the design of the drive-through, you can see here that the drive-through lane is routed back behind the buildings. The service window is behind it. All the vehicle queue is behind it. So it's not just distracting from the street view. All right, these policies were lumped together. Development within the TOC is encouraged to provide amenities to support transit stops and riders. Design features shall be required that promote and enhance pedestrian mobility, and the city shall require internal pedestrian and transit amenities. Lots of transit policies in the TOC. So I've taken the site plan again, and I've highlighted a few features. We've got the pedestrian routes we already looked at. All of those pedestrian routes are buffered by landscaping, which is highlighted in green on the site plan. And then in orange, I highlighted an outdoor seating area to enhance. It's a pedestrian amenity designed to enhance the streetscape, street life, interaction with the roadway. We've also got a bike rack on the site plan right there. All right, criterion number 2, 6, and 9. These are abbreviated, again, full text is in the staff report. Public health, safety, and welfare, safe access and minimize traffic congestion, and design shall minimize adverse effects. So again, we're looking at the drive-through stacking lane. Where there are, I wouldn't call them conflict points, intersections of vehicle traffic and pedestrian, we've got safety features in there where there's a hatching for pedestrians to cross the drive-through. And again, there's a crossing point with a dedicated sidewalk.
So they're walking across the stacking lane?
Yes. If they parked in the rear. As you can see, there's ample parking in front. But yes, if they did park in the rear, they would have to cross to get to their vehicle. Got another cross point here that's hatched out. Another cross point there that's hatched out. Again, the safe pedestrian routes. So for criterion number 3, the applicant has to demonstrate that there's a genuine need for the use and that they are not going to create a prolific saturation of the use. So to demonstrate that there's not a saturation of drive-through restaurants in the area, the closest restaurants are approximately 1,500 feet to the north. Copens is rather industrial in that area, actually. Criteria 4 and 8, we've got a compatibility analysis and that it shall not impede the surrounding properties. So I've provided this image that shows where the Culvers is located and the neighboring properties, what uses are on there. Staff didn't find any compatibility concerns in this review. There's a bowling alley to the south, a gas station to the west. Across the street, you've got a couple of dealerships. There's no sensitive uses that you would want to protect from, like late night operations, that kind of thing. Criterion number 7, adequate parking and loading. The staff report actually identified that they are providing a surplus of parking and they're contemplating a future phase of development in there. We've got bicycle parking on here, and there's even a loading zone on the south side of the property, highlighted in orange. Criterion 5 and 10, the level of services and the best interest of cities. Staff found that they met those criteria. The details are provided in the staff report for your review. And the staff recommendation is to grant a conditional approval to the applicant. The first condition would be to satisfy any remaining DRC comments. These are technical comments relating to utilities and landscaping, things like that. The second condition is staff is recommending that the applicant provide a roof over the patio dining area that was called out on the site plan earlier. And to help visualize this recommendation, we found 7 examples of other Culvers that had a roof over the dining area, and I just wanted to show some pictures. This one is located in Austin, Texas. Most of these images were grabbed from like Google Maps, Google Street View, that type of thing. And here it's kind of like an arbor style covering. That's all Austin still. The next example is Camelback, Arizona. This one's more of a canopy type covering. Here we've got Northport, Florida. Very nice canopy.
That's nice.
Arched over. The columns are stone. I don't know if you can pick up that detail from that far back. Sarasota, Florida. This image actually shows the same drive-through layout where after you pay for your food at the window, you pull forward to a queuing lane, and then servers from inside the restaurant come out and deliver your food by hand. Mr. Pierce has informed us that no food will be passed through the window at Culvers. It's a company policy, something they pride themselves on. We've got Tampa, Florida with another awning type style with stone columns. This one is in the Villages. It's a little bit more robust canopy, and you can actually see ceiling fans underneath. I believe there's a tongue and groove style ceiling with some recessed light fixtures in there. And then Winter Garden, Florida, another canopy style with the brick columns. And that concludes the staff presentation. I'm available for questions, and the applicant has the mic if they choose.
Andrew, just a quick question. What was the required parking, and then what is the parking that was supplied?
Sure.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
I'm pretty sure they provided about 74 spaces.
Well, you did say they had more than required.
Yes,
Okay.
they have a surplus of parking. So from the staff report, it reads, the applicant has provided a surplus of parking and a loading zone. The Margate zoning code requires 60 parking spaces for a restaurant of this size. The applicant has provided a total of 74 parking spaces. The surplus is anticipated to serve a retail user of approximately 4,000 square feet. So the required 60, they're providing 74.
Okay. And were there any requirement for landscaping islands in the parking
Yes,
lot?
and those are, I'll pull up the slide where they're highlighted. Generally, the code requires for parking lot landscaping, it's referred to as interior landscaping.
Right.
And when you have interlocking parking spaces, you're supposed to provide a curbed median between the interlocking spots. And the general requirement is at least 20 square feet of landscaping for every parking spot. So in green, we've got the median here. And it actually flares out towards the end by the exit of the drive-through. And then we've got 3 islands in there put in between to break up the parking.
Nice. And then the final question, and maybe the applicant would like to speak to it. The question is that this property had some flooding issues, and because we're welcoming it, and I understand there was a delay because of that. And how were those resolved?
Well, the neighboring property is the one that suffered the flooding. Yes, the neighboring property right now is undergoing some improvements to handle the excess drainage. But when this project, well, if it is approved and built, they're going to use underground storage vaults for the drainage. If I got that
Yeah, I
correct.
saw that on the plan. It was extensive.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Big system.
Okay, would the applicant like to speak?
That's okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, thank you.
No, actually, this is perfect because we might need to refer to it. Again, Steve Weary, 200 East Broward Boulevard, on behalf of Medalist Restaurant Group. And we've got with us tonight Eric Pierce, who's the principal of the company. We've got Bill Pfeffer with Bowman Engineering, which is our civil engineer, and some others from Bill's office as well. This is an application to bring in a Culvers restaurant, which is something that, unless you're from outside the area and maybe in the northern parts of the country, Midwest parts of the country, you wouldn't be familiar with Culvers. Culvers, as proposed, would be the first location of its kind in Broward County, which is something that we're very excited about. Mr. Pierce is anticipating investing upwards of $4.5 million to make this a reality. He'll be employing about 60 people total. At one time, we might have up to about 15 people, so don't think about the parking consequences of 60 people, because they won't all be there at one time. What we've done, I've heard a couple questions about drainage, and I'll say just before I get into that we agree with the points and analysis that was given by staff in evaluating the special exception criteria. I think it's important to say that. One of the things that we do need to discuss further is the suggested condition to have covered outdoor seating on the east side, and I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the challenges that we faced initially in developing this project was the drainage, and that was something that kind of was discovered after the fact, after the Wawa project was approved, and we realized that some of the existing drainage features that were out there that we anticipated connected to the canal and to other places actually didn't. And these were drainage facilities that were located within the county's right-of-way and were built a long time ago, probably 20 plus years ago. So when we found that out, obviously the city took a position, and rightfully so, that this is something that really needed to be addressed before we could move forward with a Culvers plan, because there was no understanding of exactly what it was going to take from an engineering point of view to fix that drainage. And so we worked with the county, we worked with the city and the city's engineering staff to understand and identify what that correct engineering solution is. And if you want to get into that, Mr. Pfeffer here can get into it, but it's way above my pay grade. Essentially,
I looked at the plans. The tanks underground were massive. Very nice.
It's pretty extensive. But I know we've had a couple rain events so far, and we went out to the Wawa location when those occurred, and we didn't see any pooling of water, which before those engineering features were activated was occurring. So it does appear that the engineering solutions are working. So with that, we were kind of allowed to move forward, and here we are now. So let me just step back real quick and address the question about the covered awning suggested condition. We've spent a lot of time and appreciate the back and forth that we've had with staff. I think you've heard me say it before that we believe that this kind of a dialogue results in better plans than what might occur, without that dialogue. And so I'm happy that my client, Mr. Pierce, has adopted a kind of an attitude where he really wants to work with the city and has tried to do that along the way, everywhere he can. And I think the tanks actually are a terrific illustration of that. Although Mr. Pierce can't take 100% of the credit for that. That was obviously also worked on with with Wawa and the underlying landowner and developer as well. So it was kind of a team approach. But when it comes to this this covered awning, it's on the east elevation. And if maybe I can switch back to the elevations real quick, if I paid attention. Okay, here's south, here's east. All right, so the east elevation is what you would see when you're driving west on Copans. And you can see that we've got a lot of visibility there for the brand Culvers with the sign. We've got those beautiful picture windows, which will let sunlight into the restaurant itself, it's just a beautiful building. If you have a roof that extends out, it's going to obscure to an extent the visibility of that sign. It's going to limit the usefulness of those picture windows, and the outdoor seating area is one that we've designed and proposed to include seating tables with umbrellas bolted to the ground, so there's not going to be any risk of them blowing away when the wind picks up or anything like that. So there will be shade, there will be protection from the elements if it should rain. One of the things that we've noticed in other locations in the South generally, although we don't have any in Broward County, as I said, is that given the particular kind of business that Culvers has, not that many people actually use the outside dining areas. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it, and we want to have it, and I think it looks good. It makes it seem more active. But in point of fact, it's actually not used very much.
Will there be an exit door on the east side? There
is a door there, but it's not a customer door. It's a service only door.
Okay.
On the east side.
So they would walk around to access the outdoor eating.
Okay, right. So I'm sorry. Thank you. So there wouldn't be any door there, but the closest door wouldn't even be a customer access door. It would be a service door. Mm-hmm. So our main customer access doors are on the north and on the south of the building. Closer to the center of the two buildings that are proposed. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of remote. A lot of the people who will come and visit and eat here, will come by car, and they'll pick up their food and have it walked out to them. There will be seating inside the restaurant, and most of the time, people like to sit inside the restaurant. That's what we've found. Mm-hmm. So that's our take on it. But we wanted to see if we could work with staff's suggestion on this, and we did put the question to Culver's inside architects, and they're kind of the guardians of what the design requirements are for its franchisees. And the feedback that we got was that it was not consistent with Culver's expectations for its restaurants and for visibility of its signage and so forth. And we haven't had a lot of time to push back with them on this question, and so I don't know what kind of room there might be, but the initial feedback is that it's something that wouldn't be welcomed by Culver's, the franchisor, which is not us. So with every bit of respect to staff's, I think, good intention behind that suggestion, we ask that not be included in the recommendation. One of the things that might occur to you, I haven't really heard it mentioned, and probably appropriately so, is what's happening with this future phase, the retail. And just in case there's any question about that, that would be sold off as a separate site. We don't know exactly what it would be yet, but it would be something that is a typical general retail that fits within the use category that we've used for parking calculations. So there wouldn't be any surprises in that respect. So, but we're still talking with potential suitors, I guess you could call it, and trying to identify a purchaser for that. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. At least try to.
Do you have any questions? Well, we're excited to see you come to Margate.
Thank you very
Looking
much.
forward to it. And what is the wish of the board?
Motion to approve.
I second.
Public?
Andrew Penny, Senior Planner. I just wanted to clarify on the motion. Staff was recommending 2 conditions on there. The first was to comply with all the DRC technical comments. The second was for the covered patio.
Okay.
I heard a motion to approve. Is that without?
With conditions.
Could the motion?
I'll amend the motion.
Okay. Sure.
As far as the 2 conditions go, I had forgotten about the condition to comply with all the DRC requirements. Obviously, we have no problem with that. So we would accept that condition, but respectfully request that the second condition about the covered outdoor storage not be included, please. Thank you.
No outdoor seating.
No, the cover. Oh,
We would still have the outdoor seating. We wouldn't have a fixed roof that extends out covering that area. Instead, we would have the seating
Umbrellas.
locations with umbrellas over each location.
I've been to many Culvers, especially on the West Coast. I'm like second home there, and I love the restaurant, and I'm excited they're here. I mean, what Chick-fil-A is to the chicken sandwich, they are to burgers and fries, in my opinion. But I've been to many locations, and the one in Marco Island has the seating with the umbrellas. So, I mean, that's fine, and people do use them, and I'm excited you guys are coming here.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this?
Thank you. Manny Lugo, 1129 East River Drive. We went recently to a presentation by Broward County environmental people who gave us the impression that the water table is rising, and it's going to continue to rise. I was noting here that Broward County has already estimated a loss of a half a foot in the elevation of the Broward County future groundwater conditions map. So I'm wondering, I don't understand the tanks. I'm wondering if that could be explained a little better. And what do you do when the tanks get filled up?
Good evening. Bill Pfeffer with Bowman Consulting, located at 13450 Sunrise Boulevard, engineer of record on behalf of Culvers. As everyone's fully aware, there are some issues affecting the existing Wawa. We've worked very closely with Broward County to evaluate not just the current condition, but the future condition. In fact, one of the main elements affecting the existing drainage system is a rising water table. The condition encountered in the field was about a foot higher than what county water tables map, or the county water table maps found and our geotech found. So what we've done to combat that is, you'll notice there's work being done on site now. We're actually carving out what we call a dry pond, but it's actually storage volume that will then be compensated for by the underground storage tanks that you see on the Culvers plan. In addition to that, to address his question directly in terms of what happens when the tanks fill, we are piping a connection directly to a canal that is then tied to the county's drainage system and will be coastal. So basically during large rain events, all of the canals through the county are controlled by levees, and during hurricanes and significant rain events, those canal elevations are controlled. The fact that we have a positive outfall pipe discharge directly to that canal will allow us, in conjunction with the county, to directly lower the water table on the Culver site and the Wawa site. So we'll be able to continually discharge those tanks when significant rain events occur.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Vice Mayor.
How you guys doing? Tommy Rosano, 116 East Palm Drive. And am I allowed to speak? Is that okay? Okay. Culvers coming to Margate. Awesome. I love it. What you guys are about to vote on, I think, is the outdoor dining rather than doing the table set dining. I remember there was a restaurant on Atlantic called Ritter's, and it had awesome outdoor dining, and all it was tables with umbrellas, and it was great. So I appreciate what you guys said, but making them put the outdoor awning and all that, I don't really know if that would jive, especially coming from the east and having a store that's going to be right next to it. Who knows what that'll be? So what you guys are going to be voting on, I think.
It'll also obstruct the sign, too, as well.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, the umbrellas with the tables, I think, is an awesome idea. So, good luck, guys. Congratulations, too.
Okay, so I'd like to make a, well, I have another speaker from the public. Commissioner Schwartz.
My luck. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Board. Arlene Schwartz, 7800 Northwest 1st Street, Margate, Florida. 2 questions for the gentleman from Culvers. First, how far back, and maybe you've mentioned this already, will the building be set back from Copens Road? Secondly, why bother with remote seating if you have no access point and it's a security issue? Because quite frankly, if something happens, you'd never see it. Unless you're going to have cameras, why bother with the outside seating? You're putting it on the, I read the entire backup. There's no exit from your building. There's no access if there's a problem over there. And unless you're monitoring it, why bother with it at all? So those are my 2 questions. And better that I ask you now than when I see it later.
Thank you. So our setback is approximately 80 feet from Copens Road.
Is that in line, I'm sorry, is that in line with where Wawa is? Because I have no sense of 80 feet otherwise.
Yeah, it's roughly in line with that. Yeah, with the canopy portion. So not the building. The canopy is, if you're looking, if you're standing at the edge of pavement of Copens, right, and looking, you'd see the canopy first for Wawa, and then the Wawa building itself. Our building is going to be even with the canopy, so it's going to look even with that.
Okay.
Which
And
is,
by canopy, we're not talking about where the filling station is.
yeah, where the gas pumps are, that canopy.
You're talking about bringing that building very far forward.
Well, that's 80 feet still. So,
Okay.
well, and understand as well.
I was hoping for further back and a lot of foliage.
Well, here's the problem with that. If we were to put it further back, then that wouldn't leave much room to locate the drive-through behind it. And one of our goals, one of our design goals that we got from staff was to hide and screen that drive-through. And so it constrains us a little bit in that respect.
And the second one, why bother with the seating if it's, unless you're going to have cameras there and you have no entrance, egress or
We will have surveillance all around the site, so it's definitely going to be secure. And just because not that many people use it doesn't mean nobody will use it. I mean, there are some people who like to bring their a little pup or who knows what. I do that, and that's a good opportunity for that kind of a thing.
as long as there are cameras, it's a concern. of the
Sure, it'll be safe. Thank you, though.
And I'm assuming whoever you're looking at to take the store next door will not necessarily be an auto supply place.
No, I'm sure.
Who remembers this conversation?
I am sure that my client will visit with staff and their potential suitor will visit with city commissioners and staff to make sure that it's something in keeping with the vision the city has for this property. Thank you.
Welcome to Broward County. It's nice to be first.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building, but, it brings up the problem of one of the reasons why I don't like the design of parking on both the front and the back, because it presents this kind of issue that you have to do a workaround. But I'd prefer that there be good signage for the travelers heading west. And I don't know in our weather how much the outside would be used, but I'm okay with just the tables and umbrellas.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to amend the motion, and the motion to approve with the first of the DRC.
Sir Chair, if I may, you need need to entertain the motion. You yourself cannot amend the motion,
Okay.
but you need to entertain an amendment to the motion.
Okay. Well, I'd like to entertain an amendment to the motion. And the amendment, Andrew, if you could help me out here, please. What we would like is the first part of it. Okay. Comply with DRC conditions. However, not require the... Okay. So is there a motion to amend the motion to approve so that we can add the compliance with the DRC conditions?
I motion to approve.
For the record, just to clarify, is that motion to approve the motion to approve the amendment?
Yeah, the motion to approve the amendment.
Any other comments from the public? All right, so the motion was to amend the original motion to include compliance with the DRC conditions, but nothing else, not requiring the fixed overhead outdoor seating. Melissa, please call the roll.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Ms. Vandermeulen? Yes. Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Zucchini?
Yes. That's it, guys, welcome. Item 2C, ID 2019-186. Oh,
You have to take a vote on the motion that has been amended.
okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to,
No, it's just,
No.
you want to call the question on the motion that has been amended.
okay. We'll do that. We're calling, I don't know what we're calling it.
We're calling a motion of a motion to
We're
amend
calling
the
the motion of the motion.
So,
Okay. Is there a motion as amended?
No.
Okay.
Just call the question.
Just call the roll.
Right.
Melissa?
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Ms. Vandermeulen? Yes. Mr. Reiner?
Absolutely,
Mr.
yes.
Zucchini?
Yes, again. Thank you. Okay. No more qualifications, please? Thank you. Okay, guys, again, thank you. And we're looking forward to it. Okay, item ID 2019-186, consideration of a subdivision resurvey of a portion of Margate Plaza Number 1 for the new Gateway Medical Building.
Good evening, Planning and Zoning Board.
Hang on a second.
Can I start?
What item on the agenda you have is item C for the subdivision resurvey for Margate Plaza Number 1?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going okay, go ahead.
I can start. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Board. Alexia Howell, Associate Planner, Development Services. Tonight we have the Gateway Medical Plaza for subdivision resurvey. ID number is 2019-186. The property is located in the Penn Dutch Plaza on North State Road 7, just south of an existing medical building. This is a closer look of the site. The applicant is proposing to combine two existing properties and cut out a portion of the Penn Dutch Plaza, which you see in red. And this is what it looks like right here. So this is the proposed subdivision resurvey. Per section 3.11, when a lot or tract or a parcel of land is further subdivided or re-subdivided for the purpose of development, the following requirements shall be met prior to issuance of a development permit. So prior to the site plan being approved, the subdivision resurvey must be approved by City Commission prior to the development permit approval. It also has to comply to Section 9.7 of the specific design standards, which is meeting the minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and a minimum of 100 feet of street frontage, which it does. So, So when a subdivision resurvey is required, this is what is required. When is it required? It's when you're subdividing at least one or two lots. And then in that requirement, it also reflects back to Section 31-18 and Section 31-19. And that's basically just a sketch of the subdivision, and it's the same as preparing a plat, but there isn't a county approval. And Section 31-19 is the requirements of the layout of that new subdivision. And this is the new layout of the subdivision. These are the approvals without the county approval. These are the signatures, the cover page, and then this is the new subdivision resurvey. So this application is applicable to the policies from the Margate Comprehensive Plan. The application satisfies policy 1.1 and ensures that land development regulations for platting and subdivision resurveys exist, and to ensure that the required capital improvements are available at the time new development is built. Currently, this project is located in an area that is already serviced by streets and utilities, so there are no required capital improvements linked to this application. The subject property is located within the TOCG, and a medical office is a permitted use. Staff recommends approval with conditions that a utility easement for a force main that is 12 feet wide at east and west access between the parking lots. In the blue, you'll see that this is the easement that's being proposed by the Department of Environmental Engineering Services. They're requiring a utility easement at the property for the condition of approval. And this is another one. And the applicant is here to discuss anything further.
Okay. So we're just looking at a subdivision resurvey. We're not looking at the site plan or sketch of the building or what have you.
That's correct. In
Okay.
order for the site plan to move forward, the subdivision resurvey has to be approved to accommodate the building width, the building they would like to build, but before this has to be approved prior to site plan
Well,
approval.
I have a question of staff. Since this is going to use part of the existing parking lot from the Penn Dutch Plaza, does that affect the rest of the plaza? Is that going to trigger anything for the stores in the plaza on the south end?
Part of the review process, we've taken a look at the parking, available parking and parking requirements, and there is adequate parking for the Penn Dutch Plaza with this change.
What about landscaping, photometric, and so on? Doesn't that affect the rest of the plaza? Wouldn't the...
No, there's no proposed changes of use or change of occupancy in the Penn Dutch Plaza. This is just being carved out, so those issues
other
will
than
be...
the parking?
just that little bit of the parking area. So it does not change it doesn't trigger the things that we have with other types of activities to change of occupancy.
I'm glad you said that. Okay. The applicant.
Thank you. Anthony Brunetti, 10167 Northwest 31st Street, on behalf of the developer of the building. In the case of the force main easement being recorded, there's documentation of an existing force main just north of our property line. It's not on our property line, but it's just to the north. And we've been in discussions with the owner of that property to record that force main. And from our discussions with these, that if we have this force main recorded, which that is the actual location, it just needs to be recorded, then we would not need to do the other easement. So our intention would be to have this recorded, and thus far it seems like the cooperation with the property owner will allow that as well. So we would like to ask that the condition be that we are able to have this force main recorded versus have it on our property.
Staff?
The condition, because it hasn't occurred, you could change the condition slightly that in the event that the northern area easement is not dedicated, and then they would be required to dedicate the easement as shown on this map. So you can make it conditional.
Okay, would you like to word that for me again, please?
I believe that the condition would be to have the force main on the side where the adjoining property of the Glickstein, that's the medical office, they're willing to do the recordation on that side. So I guess we could just keep it kind of short and simple and satisfy utility easements on all the property.
But isn't that where a pass-through is also? Isn't there?
When you say pass-through.
Isn't there a drive-through at that point?
On the east side of the property, it will be connected to the existing doctor's office.
Over here.
At the northern part, there's a connection there. Again, one of the advantages of where the force main is being proposed is if in the future you had to go in and repair the force main. On the northern side, you have existing landscaping that would all be removed, would have to be replaced. Mm-hmm. But whereas in the existing, in that blue location, it's the existing driveway, it's all you're tearing up is a drive. So there's an advantage in that sense. However, the repair of the landscaping would not be a burden on the city. It's the property owner's burden because the city has the right to go in and do any work they have to do. It's the owners beware that you have this. But again, I think that there's enough flexibility is that if you again make it a condition that in the event that the easement on the adjacent property that's parallel to the northern end of this is not granted, then the easement as shown in this would be required.
Would anyone like to take a stab at that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, wait a minute. Anyone from the public? Normally we'll make a motion and then the public speaks, but is there anyone from the public that would like to speak?
I will word this for you if you'll allow me.
Sure. That would be a welcome.
You will accept.
It will be a welcome help.
My pleasure. I've had some practice. Arlene Schwartz, City Commissioner. You would accept the condition unless a cross-access agreement is signed between the petitioner and the people who already have that agreement. Would that make sense?
if I may, that there is already a cross-access easement across all this property as Penn Dutch. This is a utility issue,
All right.
not.
Unless the utility easement is granted from the owner who already has one. So you're accepting the condition unless it's changed with an agreement between the proposed agreement. That would be your condition. If they get that access agreement done, then you don't have to accept the condition. Otherwise, it's a condition unless this is granted. Would that make sense?
I don't know. Staff seems to say a little different. I'd like to hear both.
What is being proposed is essentially the same, that you're required to put in this easement unless the other easement's done. So it's chicken and the egg. I mean, it either works.
But it's easier for them to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
They understand unless.
Unless.
And what's the opinion of the board? Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
With
with unless
a condition?
condition.
To accept the condition unless an agreement is signed and presented to you that fulfills what the DRC is asking.
Precisely.
Unless let me say that unless an easement is granted on the north, on the adjacent property just north of the project.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a second? Okay, anyone else from the public like to speak?
The reason I do have a question, and it probably doesn't have to do with this, but it might. I have an issue personally with the name of this plaza, which is called New Springs, and it is in Margate, as did and also the direction. This has nothing to do with that, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt, my apologies, but it's been renamed. Their first proposal was New Springs, but now it's the Gateway Medical Plaza.
Why not the Margate Medical Plaza? Well, I'm just a suggestion. The other thing is there was an issue about the direction that this building sat. You wanted it turned a different way so that it was visible in a certain way from State Road 7. I read all this stuff. I know, but perhaps you...
But actually, they kept the original orientation, but they improved the facade on the west side of the building. So it's a much nicer design for the view from Penn Dutch. So this is, again, an example where the staff worked with the developer. The developer was very cooperative in coming up with a really nice design for the facade on the west side.
Thank you, because as we clearly know, we need some design standards in this city. Thank you.
Melissa, would you like to call the roll, please?
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Ms. Vandermeulen?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Zucchini?
Yes. Item 2D, ID 2019-204, consideration of a subdivision resurvey for the new Culvers restaurant.
Let's try this again. So this is Culvers Restaurant 2019-204. This is Alexia Howell, Associate Planner, Development Services. This is the Culvers location. We went through the special exception, but today you're seeing the subdivision resurvey. In order for them to move forward with a new plat, they need to have the subdivision resurvey. This is the location of West Copans Road, north and the corner of Northwest 55th Avenue and West Copans Road. The applicant is subdividing the Margate District Headquarters plat and creating a parcel that consists of the east half of the property. And this is the current plat, Margate District Headquarters, and this is the proposed subdivision resurvey in the yellow. This is where the Culvers new subdivision resurvey. And this is a site location. We have the Wawa on the left and the Culvers on the right-hand side. Again, it has to comply with the Section 3.11 of Margate Zoning Code, Section 9.7 of the Design Standards, Section 31-18, Margate Code of Ordinances, and 3119. And basically, 3.11 is when is a subdivision required? It's when a lot or any parcel is subdivided or re-subdivided, and it refers back to Section 31-18 and -3119, which is the requirements of the sketch of the subdivision and the layout of the new subdivision. We also have the policies of the comprehensive plan, policy 1.1 and 1.2, which goes further into regulating the subdivision and re-subdivision of parcels, meaning that we have some sort of ensure that there is some land development regulations for platting and subdivision resurvey, and that the required capital improvements are available at the time of new development, but because this is already an existing, there are services of streets and utilities. And the compatibility of the subject property is located within the TOCG, and a restaurant and a retail is a permitted use at that zoning district. And staff is recommending that planning and zoning recommends approval to City Commission.
Without conditions.
Without any conditions. That's it.
Anyone from the public? No?
Good evening, Steve Weary, 200 East Broward Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on behalf of Medalist Restaurant Group. And Ms. Howell, thank you very much. Terrific job there. I want to say that that we agree with staff's analysis as it relates to this application, and that the purpose behind this application is to facilitate the ability of my client to be able to purchase this property. Their intention is not to be a lessor from another property owner. In fact, you know, as we recognize, this this property, together with the Wawa next door, was previously and technically today is one parcel, and the intention is to purchase it. To accommodate that, it has to be subdivided. So with the approval of this application, my client will be able to hopefully sometime after beginning of June close on the property as part of its overall strategy to get the Culvers restaurant established. And this is obviously tied to the Culvers special exception that you just heard. And that's it, really. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
My name is Margaret Bartels, and I'm a citizen of Margate, resident.
Margaret, your address?
Pardon me?
Your address?
Oh, 7200 Northwest 24th Court.
Thank you.
Carolina Club. What I'm concerned about is 55th Avenue as it comes out onto Copans. If you're trying to make a west turn now with the Wawa traffic, it's impossible to get out of there. I mean, you do get out, but I mean, you've got cars coming both directions, trying to come into 55th, coming out of 55th onto Copans. And then you've got people coming from Wawa to make a U-turn to head back west. So it's a traffic problem there trying to make a west turn onto Copans, Royal Palm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think you need to do a traffic study there to see how many cars are affected. There's a lot of warehouses back in there. All right? That's my major concern. And of course you could come out onto 441, but again, if you're trying to head west, you have to go across 3 lanes of traffic to get into that lane to make a west turn. I'm not good at speaking, even though I'm a retired teacher.
You did a great job.
It's the first time I've done this.
Staff, you want to make any comment on that, or the applicant?
Okay, as part of the process, in looking at a special exception, a traffic study was provided, and it did not show any significant increase in problems along Copans. Unfortunately, Copans is and Royal Palm is a major east-west corridor, and it just there's so much traffic on that's really beyond our control from Coconut Creek and Coral Springs. It is a difficult situation. And we at this time I don't see anything. Unfortunately, this issue should have been brought up under the special exception. That's where we look at traffic. This is simply the subdivision of the property,
Right.
and this in itself does not generate traffic, and that's
Right.
And it's unfortunate it didn't come up earlier. We could have, possibly done more on
We
that.
just now noticed a sign going in and out at the meeting tonight.
Well, the two items before this, we talked about the design, the special exception for the Culvers.
Oh, because it just said 8 o'clock on that sign.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, that's
Because
the situation.
you also have people trying to turn into that automobile on
Yeah.
the north side.
Yeah.
It's a mess there. Just be prepared for a lot of accidents.
Again, Steve Weary, I just wanted to address Ms. Bartel's point. It's an important point. It's something that we're all facing in the city and in South Florida generally. One of the things that we did is prepare a traffic study that looked at the traffic impacts of the proposed use. And although it's not really part of the criteria for this, I do want to address the point because I don't want to have anybody feel like they're not having their questions answered. That traffic study showed that the functioning of the intersection at this location is at a level of service C. When you add in, and that's now, when you add in all of the traffic that will come from the Culvers, the result will be still level of service C. It's possible that at some point in time, when enough traffic is added into that intersection, it'll drop down to a level of service D. Level of service D is still an acceptable level of service for functioning. I'm not saying it's convenient or that you'd want to wait there, but technically speaking, it's still an acceptable level of service. And we're not even at D yet. We're still at level of service C. So that's the sort of the technical answer to that. Thanks.
Yeah, if I may add to that, just for the new board members, the level of service and traffic is typically A through F. A is free flowing. You just speed through the area, no problem at all. F is essentially gridlock. You're locked in. Not quite that bad. And level of service C, therefore, is about average. It's safe. It typically flows, but it's not always flowing. It's not super convenient. And as I said, that it didn't show any significant change keeping it at C. If it did go to D, yes, there'll be a little bit more congestion, but still within the acceptable range. And that, as we work on the comprehensive plan and we get into the transportation element, the level of service will be part of the things that we'll be looking at. And it's a challenge. It's a statewide challenge. It's a national challenge in how you deal with traffic. But we will be addressing that. But that, just to help give you an idea, C is like average versus from A to F.
Yeah, actually, I wish I would have heard her question on the item before. I would have asked about connectivity between the Culvers and the Wawa, trying to get out to 441 instead. But this is simply the issue of the survey. And do we have a motion?
Yeah, I motion to approve.
Second.
Any other final comments from the public? Alyssa, please take the vote.
Mr. Fritz?
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Vandermeulen?
No.
Could you speak into your mic, please?
No, I don't have enough information. Like you said, I would like to
Okay.
know if there is a way from one to go through into the other, so you can get out on,
Sir Chair, if I'm
hold on.
through the chair. This particular item, as staff had indicated, it's solely for the resurvey. So your decision should be based on your opinions of whether or not the resurvey should be approved.
This is
or
only on the
not
resurvey.
necessarily the special exception that was heard prior.
okay.
And your city attorney is correct, but I don't mind answering the question if it's the chair's desire that I do so.
Would you
Well,
like-
if
This
it's,
is simply on the resurvey, allowing Culvers that additional property to move forward. This is not about the configuration.
all right, we will discuss that later. That will happen.
Or you can speak at the commission when it comes up. I think they're waiting for your vote.
All right, yeah, we'll go with yes, just for that.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Zucchini?
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you. And item E, ID